What did the landscape look like when you first stepped into tech? Probably very male dominated.
It wasn't just about being the only female, it was a culture thing as well. It was really difficult to be known and to be seen as a valuable player and to be able to progress. Really hard work. But it's been really, really good to see that change over the years.
Behind every Microsoft partner is a story of growth, a story of ambition, and a story of people pushing themselves, their businesses, and technology further. Every week here on Microsoft Mentors, the podcast, I speak to business, technology, and thought leaders from across the Microsoft partner ecosystem, offering mentorship at scale to the Microsoft partner community. So let's dive into this week's episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. So we are back now for season 3 and I'm really pleased to be joined by Helen Gerling from Shaping Cloud. Hi Helen, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries at all. So where I always like to start the podcast, Helen, is just get a little short introduction from yourself so our listeners know who you are and what you're doing at the moment, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'm Helen Gelling, CEO of Shaping Cloud. We're a Microsoft partner helping organizations modernize with cloud data and AI. But I spent my career at the intersection of technology and transformation, both as a client and now as a delivery partner.
Awesome. And yeah, we've sort of crossed paths over the years in different guises, and yeah, it'd be interesting to really dig into sort of your career and sort of how that's led you to Shaping Cloud, and then dive a little bit more into what Shaping Cloud are doing in the Microsoft partner ecosystem as well. So listeners of the podcast will know this is always my favourite sort of starting point of all these conversations, and we spoke about it the other day around what the spark looks like for a lot of people in technology, and how that can almost sort of define their careers moving forward. So with you, what did that look like sort of early years, school, before that, in terms of tech? Were you always involved and interested in technology?
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like I was born into tech. I mean, I was born right at the beginning of what's called the millennial generation or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think I was kind of fortunate because I was at the end of the previous generation, and so kind of I knew what life was like before computers, but had computers from a really early age. So 5-6 years old, I was coding on Amstrad at home. At school, we had BBC computers, so really lucky to be early in terms of kind of adopting tech in the 80s. So yeah, I was coding from an early age, then got into gaming with Sega. And then by the age of 15, we had a PC at home. I was online, American Online, You've Got Mail, all of that. And chatting to people all over the world about tech, about coding. Met a lot of hackers at the time, some of whom tried to take over my computer and some of them succeeded. But through all of that, just like curious really, what is this thing? What is the internet? How do you code? Tried creating websites, that kind of thing. Tried a little bit of hacking. I definitely was curious, not malicious. Just kind of like, what is this? How do you find open ports? What does that mean? Etc. That kind of thing. But it's really good grounding in everything from networking through to coding, really. And all of that before I went to uni. So yeah, born into tech, lived tech, breathed tech. Probably always been a part of my life, really.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about as well what that journey will look like for people now. So if you imagine Helen 4 or 5 years old in 2025, the access to technology that they've got now, and the difference of that journey and what it's going to look like by the time that they enter the job market is just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, they're really lucky, I would say, in terms of what they've got access to now. And actually, that's what I always look for in new recruits and hires as well. I'm less interested in professional qualifications, and I'm more interested in that hunger, that curiosity for all that tech can do. I think it's really important. And yeah, I wish I'd had access to the internet and AI and all that sort of stuff. And I was young, I had to read books on it. So.
Yeah. Well, it's so important now, isn't it, as well, because the rate of change of technology means that as a technologist in whatever discipline you're working in, you've always got to be learning what the next bit is and how that applies to your role, whether that's customer facing or sort of internal. So you've got to love it, right? Otherwise it's going to always feel like a chore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you've got to love anything you do in life, don't you? So yeah, don't do tech just for the money, because you'll fall out of love it pretty quickly. Yeah. But do it if you love it, and there's loads of opportunity if you do. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that sort of early journey then, where did that land you on sort of the educational pathway in terms of school and then through into sort of higher education, university? What did that look like from your side?
Yeah, I didn't take a typical route, to be honest with you. So I did do, maths, further maths, physics at A-level, so I was always bound to a science path. But I looked at all of the degrees that were out there and the opportunities, and I was really, to be honest with you, not inspired by any of them. I wanted something that had meaning as well as tech, and I just couldn't find that. So they threw me into like extra career counselling and that kind of thing to try to find a path so that they could tick their box and say, all of their students have gone to university. But I really just wanted to get into an apprenticeship and just kind of get going in the workforce. And there wasn't that opportunity when I was at school. It was all kind of, you have to go A-levels, university, that was the only option. So I did take a different path. I didn't end up doing anything with it, but I ended up in America. So I actually met a pilot who kind of flew planes and did all the engineering and mechanics work on their planes too. And like flew into like aid relief areas and things like that. And I was like, you know what? I love tech, but that can apply into engineering. And everyone was kind of pushing me into engineering. And I was like, that sounds inspiring. Maybe I'll go do that. And there's 3-4 places in the world that train people for that. One of them in America. So I looked it up online. I applied. I got in, and I got on a plane and said goodbye to my parents at 18 and flew off to Chicago. So started in aviation and doing all that for 2 years. And actually, in the first couple of years at uni, you do all these kind of generic courses in America, like psychology 101, philosophy 101, all this stuff. Started learning a lot about non-technical things that actually did inspire me more, not more, but similarly, things I'd never been able to study before. So I actually, my first week at the uni, I had to get a network card installed into my brand new laptop to get onto the internet at uni. And when I was getting it installed, I was asking lots of questions. How do you do that? Why are you doing that? What does that do? How are they troubleshooting it? And just through that conversation, I got offered a job in the IT department. So from the start, I had the best paying job on campus in tech, really happy, but also studying all these other interesting things. So after 2 years, I just said, I really am not going to do this pilot thing. I love working in IT. What's the fastest way for me to close off and have a degree to show that I've done something for my time? So I ended up just getting a Bachelor of Arts in theology, of all things, and just finished up working in IT. I was working about 24 hours a week in IT the whole time I was at uni. Finished up in that and left and tried to look for an IT job. So yeah, bit of a way to finish uni and get into the IT career. But I think I was just all of the IT like degrees at the time, computer science degrees, were in like old school programming for on-premise big applications, and I was already coding websites and looking at web apps. So for me, just going straight into the workforce would have been the better thing probably. But it was a great experience.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it, with university education at the moment, especially around technology. Just personally, I sort of conflicted on the idea. I went to uni and did psychology, and my uni experience was amazing and I loved it. But then I look at my kids and I'm like, just the cost of university as it is right now, it's difficult to see where the real value is. That's just my personal view. And there's obviously...
No, I totally agree. I think getting into the debt is quite a significant consideration now. It's like, do I really need it? And I've got the same because I've got a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old, so we're coming up against the same questions. And I've said to both of them, unless the degree gets you into your career, as much as it's a great experience, it's not worth the debt to do that, and you can get similar experience elsewhere. I do think, like, uni's brilliant, right? You round yourself out as an individual. You learn to do critical thinking, to analyze things properly. Except, there's lots of extra skills you get at uni, but yeah, I think you have to be really selective now in terms of what you choose to do, and especially computing. I mean, stuff's changing so fast. It's almost impossible for educational institutions to stay up to date with what's out there.
Yeah, and the parallels are there with your experience, right? In that you couldn't really find anything, and you were already probably ahead of the technology landscape versus where the educational institutions were, and that's only going to be the same now. It's been the same with cloud. It's going to get even more exacerbated with AI, you would expect. So yeah, I mean, I definitely would never say to people don't go to uni, but I do think it's something that really needs to be considered. And if you're thinking about tech, there are some other really strong routes in there. I think tech apprenticeships as well. I mean, you mentioned that there probably wasn't as much of a route when you were coming out of school, but I think they've matured a lot now. And I think there's quite a lot of options for technical apprenticeships now.
Yeah, I wish they were there when I was coming out of school. They just weren't. So yeah, I think it's great. I hugely support technical apprenticeships. I think it's a brilliant route into IT careers for sure.
Yeah, and so you did the sort of the IT role whilst at uni in the States, and then did you stay in the States? Did you come back to the UK? What did your life look like after that?
I came back to the UK. The rules for staying in America are very stringent, and even more so now, right? I came back. I actually brought my husband with me though, so I did marry an American, so I could have stayed if I wanted to. But we did the classic pros and cons list of UK versus US. It had been a long time since I'd spent time with my family. I had a new niece that I barely knew, so we said, let's come back to the UK for 2 years, and then the world's our oyster. Let's see where we go from there. My husband made me promise it would be 2 years and no more. He also said, let's never ever live in Manchester, because he'd come to visit it for a bit, and the weather's not great in Manchester, so he hadn't seen the best side of it. So that's what we agreed to do. And then within 6 months of moving back to the UK, we moved to Manchester. And then about 8 years after living in Manchester, he said to me, you know what, it's all right living here. I like the people. I was like, okay, solved.
Got him in the end.
Yeah.
And so that was when you sort of first stepped into working in the public sector then, was it, with Trafford Metropolitan Borough?
Yeah, that's right. I applied for lots of temp roles because it was the quickest way into work. And annoyingly, HSBC was one of the ones I had to do a data input tests and stuff like that. And there was another, I think it was a law firm or something, and they kept coming back and saying, you won't stay in the job. You've got too much experience. You type too fast. You won't stay in the job, so there's no point hiring you. It's really frustrating. So the Trafford Council, it was just the first one where I got an interview and was able to kind of talk about what I wanted to do with my IT career, and they took me under their wing and said, yeah, we'd like to hire you. I started on the help desk, helping, really going backwards in tech. So this was like 2003, and I was trying to tell people over the phone what a mouse was, because they were moving from mainframes to PCs. So it was a bit of a tech shock to me, in terms of where they were maturity wise in terms of tech, but actually Traffic Council was a great place to start in the public sector, because they actually were, despite that, were ahead of the times in terms of tech and in terms of the other experiences I had in local authorities, and really were transforming very swiftly into modern tech. So it was a great place to start, great grounding. I was able to work in lots of different tech roles there, and really grow as a human as well as, in terms of tech. I think it's the first place where I really realised the importance of the human side of tech, and the fact that, they have to work in balance and in harmony and work together to get the results and the outcomes that you're looking for out of it. So it was a great place to start.
Yeah, and then that sort of set the course of the next decade or so of your career, really, wasn't it? In terms of working with Northwest local authorities to sort of drive transformation and from your perspective of your career, sort of stepping through that career ladder into different roles and eventually into sort of senior IT leadership roles, and we're sort of moving into that more strategic thinking side of IT, somewhere where you always saw yourself going, rather than maybe sort of being on the tools for the whole of your career?
Probably not where I saw myself going initially. I think, you look back and you think about your decisions, you think, what have I done differently? I think I don't think I realised when I entered the workforce how far organisations were behind in tech. For me, it had always been just a part of life. And so I think in retrospect, I probably would have been better off just going into a tech firm and doing innovative things. But that said, I don't regret that time at all. It definitely ticked a lot of other boxes. I'm really socially conscious. I'm really interested in kind of giving back and, improving communities and the life chances of people despite where they start from. And so in that sense, it ticked a lot of boxes that perhaps just being in a pure tech firm wouldn't have ticked. And also, I think, I am probably quite introverted. I'm very techie. I am your typical techie. Although I don't necessarily come across that way today. That is who I am inside. I've had to learn how to communicate with people. So in that sense, I think that grounding probably gave me a really good development, in terms of commerciality, in terms of people change, all of the people and cultural side of tech. And certainly, being able to deliver tech and transformation for the benefit of local communities and people was hugely rewarding in its own way. And then broadening out into business transformation, had some really good mentors along the way, and I wouldn't necessarily have got that elsewhere. So I'm really, really thankful for kind of everyone that's been a part of that journey and making me who I am today. But I'm also glad that I stepped out of it. So.
Yeah, it feels like, listening to your early career, it feels like it was that sort of good mesh between, being able to still be involved with technology and transformation, but also have that social element of it, which ultimately is by making these organisations more efficient through tech and more capable through technology, that then has a sort of a grounding effect out into the communities that they serve, right?
In theory, yeah, that was why I was there.
Yeah.
You want to go into politics on the podcast?
Yeah. I mean, I guess
that was definitely mine, and a huge number of people I worked with. That was everyone's kind of, purpose and reason for being there was to make a difference. Yeah, in tech, into social society. I think the politics can get in the way, but yeah, that's another story.
Yeah. I guess with that sort of that whole public sector ecosystem that you worked within, do you it obviously sounds like they were probably less mature than maybe you were expecting in terms of their technology ecosystems. Do you find that sort of during your course of working across those different organisations that maturity did start to come in, and that there was transformation happening and there was drives towards sort of modernisation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can be critical of them because I worked within them, but on the other hand, I've now worked across lots of different sectors as well, in the role that I'm currently in and as a consultant. And I don't think they're unique. In fact, actually, I'm quite proud of how mature they are technically in local authorities, particularly compared to central government, even in comparison with legal sector, and other, large corporates. It's slow to change. It's difficult to change. You need to do that without disrupting the business. And so I think there was probably just a bit of naivety in me early on in terms of what the pace of change could be in those organisations, and in reality, I think they transformed pretty swiftly. At Trafford, as I say, they came out of mainframes into PCs and the internet very swiftly in the early 2000s. At Rochdale Council, we completely they had data centres in these tall towers that were going to be demolished, and within 2 years we replaced absolutely everything, all of their data centres, into new state-of-the-art data centres that were more resilient. We replaced all of the PCs and endpoint PCs, and upgraded all of those, and all of the networking and all of the WAN and all of the telephony. We were one of the first to adopt Skype, and that was like back in 2011 across the whole organisation for telephony. And then at Oldham Council, it was all about transforming customer services with respect to technology and automating and making that more efficient and more informed for the whole customer journey and joining up data. So given that was almost a decade ago now, all of that prior to that, I think they were pretty forward actually in terms of an enterprise organisation.
Yeah. And now you've seen sort of, you've obviously been on the internal side in public sector. Now at Shape and Cloud, you're sort of on the external side, both in the private sector and the public sector. Do you think that, because I think there probably is this this sort of opinion, thought that the public sector moves in its own way and it has its own unique sort of barriers and challenges when it comes to technology. Do you think in reality that is the case, or do you think actually it is, maybe it's slightly different challenges, but it is comparable to a lot of things that happen in big corporates?
I think it's really similar to what happened to big corporates, to be honest. Yeah. I don't think it's that unique. I think the difference is, I think you have to understand their drivers. The budget holder for IT might have to be cost conscious, but they're not thinking about ensuring that the revenue is coming in all the time, because it's the revenue streams are a bit more stable. So it is more about achieving their aims in the local community as efficiently as possible, and about being really close to the residents and understanding their needs, and serving those. And I think the other complexity is, in a local authority, it's so many different business units all within one organisation. I mean, it's really difficult to understand when you're dealing with organisations, legal services, there may be some insurance, there may be, similar things in there, but at the end of the day, they're a legal firm. Similarly with a finance organisation, at the end of the day, they're a finance organisation. Whereas with a local authority, you've got everything from highways and changing, tarmac, predicting tarmac needs for keeping your roads pothole free, to grass cutting, to dealing with the most vulnerable in society in terms of adults who need support and care, and children who need safeguarding, and everything in between. It's really quite diverse in terms of its business functions, and so in that sense, you do have to take a slightly different approach, both in terms of your overall strategy and architecture, but also how you deliver and how to deal with change. So it is different, but not in the ways that you stereotypically think of in terms of, it's slow, it's behind and difficult to change. It's just more complex.
Yeah. Yeah, and never really thought of that when it comes to local authorities. Like, they do everything for us. Like, they collect the bins and they cut the grass, and then, like you say, they're running social services, and all of those business units have all got unique requirements from technology, right? And they've got some of office workers, some of frontline workers, and they've all got different needs. And I guess you've then got to mesh that together into a coherent IT and technology strategy for them, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's complicated. And also, they work so much hand in hand with police and healthcare nowadays as well. Yeah, it's even more complicated than you might imagine. So
Yeah. So that was sort of a big chunk of your career, and then
Mm,
sort of 7 years ago, you took the step across and initially joined Shaping Cloud as a principal consultant. Was it? Is that your first role into
that's right.
Shaping
Yeah,
Cloud?
yeah.
I guess.
It was a easy way to transition. I think when you're coming out of public sector and wanting to get back into private sector, it can be challenging, to prove yourself. And so I thought moving into consultant role is probably the easiest thing for me, because they would want to point me out, the places that I've come from as clients, and that's what they did. So they just picked up a really large contract for the Greater Manchester region for public sector for both health and local authority, and they needed a consultant to lead on that piece of work. So I came in, built the team around me, and the rest is history. It was really good. I will never forget. I will never regret that transition. I was ready to get back into innovation change. I wanted a faster pace. I think on the partner side, you're able to move at a much faster pace, and you're also able to have a bigger impact on many organisations, as opposed to being kind of stuck within one and having to work at their pace of change. You can come in and add that value across organisations, and that was really meaningful for me. So really, really good to get back to techies and the culture of techie, which I missed. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So with that principal consultant role, was that sort of going back down into sort of being a bit more hands-on and in the sort of the nuts and bolts and the weeds of the technology solution, as well as the sort of the high level strategy piece with customers then?
It was more around the strategy, so it was advising cloud strategies for councils and the NHS. Certainly we needed to understand the technology right down to the nuts and bolts, but it was more about assessing what they've got, telling them what it's costing them, helping them devise a strategy that aligned with their organisational aims, and one that they could afford to implement, so make it pragmatic to deliver. I think a lot of them, they would know that cloud is here to stay. They know that it's part of the future, but they're just not sure how much it's a part of their future and how to walk that journey in terms of adopting that and making that difference for them in terms of achieving their organisational aims. I often found that actually it was kind of taking the hand of the head of IT or the infrastructure manager and a CDO or a CIO or business leader who had this vision of what they want, where they wanted to get to with technology, and kind of putting the two together with a pragmatic plan that kind of said, that's great vision, but this is where you are. So kind of a reality check for the sake of the head of IT, but then also plotting a path to say, but we do need to achieve that. You can't just ignore change. So this is a pragmatic path in terms of doing that. And also here's some quick wins you can realise for the business along the journey as well. So holding those hands and helping them have a plan.
And then the journey for you from sort of entering into Shaping Cloud as principal consultant, and then 18 months, 2 years later, being MD with a couple of little roles in between, was when you joined Shaping Cloud, were there conversations about sort of maturing into leadership? Had that been a pathway? Did it happen organically? Because it feels like quite an accelerated path from coming in and joining a business fairly new as a principal consultant to then, eventually sort of 18 months, 2 years later, stepping into to sort of run the show as MD. So what did that little journey look like over those couple of years?
Yeah, it's a combination of things, really. I definitely didn't join for that purpose. I was quite happy to get back to just delivering and making a difference and not having the worry of budgets and people management and all that kind of thing. So, I mean, it's not like I didn't have that experience. I was a director in local authorities, so I was responsible for various different departments, and that involved people management and budget management, etc. But I was stepping into technology, back into the private sector, thinking I'll just take it easy for a while and do what I'm good at. But things happen. The business was growing at pace. There was a product side and a consulting side. They weren't great bedfellows, as they never are really. They require different investment models. They require different approaches. And then the director of consulting at the time, unfortunately, had a stroke, and so I had to retire early with ill health. And so they just said, could you pick that up for now? And I am a bit of a problem solver, so unfortunately say yes too many times. So I just kind of, of course I'll help, which ended up leading it. And then when there was decision came to split the business into consulting and product, I actually had just been offered a job at DWP as their head of hybrid cloud, literally the same day that they said to me, please don't go, because they'd heard that I was applying. Please don't go. We're going to split the business, and we want you to head up what remains of the consulting business. And so, I remember walking around pacing for a day thinking, what do I do? What do I do? But, it's a rare opportunity to be gifted the opportunity to actually, lead the show, take on a company and make something of it. And so I just thought, I don't think I'm ever going to get this opportunity again. I'd really like to kind of take all my experience and apply it into shaping and growing a company. So turned down that DWP role and started running Shaping Cloud. Thanks. I think it was the right choice, though, because I think the CIO that was hiring me on the other side left only a couple of months later, and he was one of the main reasons I wanted to join that organisation. So
it's amazing the coincidences of timing, isn't it, in our lives with things like that happening. If it had been a month or two later, you might have been back at DWP and still now, who knows.
And I don't know why I would want to go back into government. Honestly, I mean, I think there's still something in me that just really, really wants to make a positive difference, but I also remember all of the challenges, so I'm very happy where I am.
And as you stepped into that sort of MD role, then what was sort of top of the in tray for you in terms of priorities? What did that look like, going from being sort of a director leader within the business to becoming the leader of the business? And where did you sort of set your stall out in terms of, well, these are actually the priorities that I want to focus on straight away?
I think when you're put into something like that, it's never perfect, right? We just split the business, and so the first priority was stability, because we needed to know that we could operate in isolation. So initially it was just, where's the cash? Where's it coming from? Where's it going? And how do we get control of this thing? So it was a very fast track course on business management and financial management and everything around that. But within months had a really stable, we knew where we were, we had stability, etc. So that was the main focus. It happened right at the cusp of COVID as well, so it wasn't great timing. They made the decision December 2019. I picked up the business January 2020, and that first quarter was just stabilizing the business, and then of course COVID hit, so thanks for that. But we made it. COVID wasn't such a big impact for us negatively anyway. It was positive in some ways because customers needed tech. But for us, we were already cloud first, all very mobile. So in that sense, it was a straightforward transition. But then soon after that, it was obviously then a focus on growth, right? Well, what are our plans? And we'd always been really frustrated with how we were consulting and telling people what they need to do and how to do it. But then we were handing over to delivery partners who would then not necessarily deliver well for the client, because there were delivery partners who were traditional tech partners who were learning cloud, whereas we were kind of cloud born. So I said, let's stop handing these over to poor delivery. Let's build that delivery capability ourselves and be able to follow through for customers, and deliver on their strategies and deliver on what we say is possible, because otherwise it also undermines our recommendations, if it's not deliverable. So that's what we did. So we built up the delivery capacity, proved that it was possible to do what we said they should do, and then that bit is the rest. That bit's history now. That's the main part of what we are now as delivery partner in that sense. So it became a reliable and trusted delivery partner as well as a reliable and trusted consulting partner. And then in a couple of years ago, we had a similar conversation about managed services. Why are we handing over to managed service partners who are managed service traditional partners learning cloud? Why don't we just do managed cloud? And so we birthed that as well a couple of years ago, and now we do the full service, so consulting all the way through to managed services. And I think the future will be much more of that managed services part growing as part of the business. So
yeah. And I know from conversations that we've had in the past that for you, as you went and have been through those sort of different cycles of growing different teams, the need to find the right technology skill is obviously there and paramount, but also finding people, building a culture, an environment where people want to work that's collaborative, supportive, has really been important to you. So how did you approach that as a leadership team in terms of building the structure for that?
Yeah, I was really fortunate actually, because when Shaping Cloud, obviously I joined Shaping Cloud before taking it over, and they were a really tech and modern company, and so in that sense they they had that startup culture, where it's fun and everyone gets along and etc. So in that sense they had some of the foundations right, and that's one of the things that the founder said when he handed the keys over for this part of the company to me was, I'm glad it's Helen because she understands the culture and will keep that through the growth. And so that's been a real focus of mine, not just for the sake of those of us that were there in the early days, and keeping it for them, but also just, new people coming into the company. It has matured for sure. You have to mature it as you grow, and it's been much more intentional about inclusivity, around supporting flexible working, particularly for females in tech, etc. So it's been much more intentional as we've grown, but really we want it to be a place we want to work. We want to work in a place where you're enabled, you're trusted, where there's minimum red tape, where there's process for outcome's sake and not process for process sake, and where we all enjoy working alongside each other and respect each other and have good communication and trust. So it's just been baked into everything really, intentionally. Whenever someone says, oh, we need a process for this, we always go back to, okay, but why? What are we trying to achieve? And focus on that, which is really similar to how we approach tech with clients anyway. It's got to be about the outcome. Tech for tech's sake is meaningless. It's got to be about the outcome. We've had some really good people help us as well. We had Lottie Claven, who for 3 years did a brilliant job pairing with me around how we build culture, etc. I know Lottie as well because she's interacted with you a lot. But really in helping us get that right in terms of the balance between HR and culture, and making sure that we are safe and compliant, but also a great place to work.
Yeah, 100%. It's so important. There are so many businesses out there delivering some kind of tech or IT solution. A lot of that obviously in the Microsoft ecosystem. So it's a real way that you can differentiate yourself as a business and both attract the right talent and also make sure that the team that you've got now is happy and wants to stay and continue and grow with the business, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Hence why we partner with you.
We've been through a curve which we maybe thought was a fast curve from into virtualization, then into public cloud. So where is Shaping Cloud position now in terms of where you're really spending the most time with customers?
we're born in the cloud, we're Azure focused, so we're Microsoft focused. So everything that is Microsoft cloud services is what we specialize in. It's what we spend our time on, but for the purpose of delivering outcomes for customers. So it's about partnering with the customer, understanding their aims, and then bringing that technology to bear for the sake of achieving that. Where we're refocusing a lot of our time on building that managed service capability, because we really do believe we can do better there in terms of what's available in the market. We're still doing a lot of transformation journeys with customers in terms of kind of that actually implementing cloud services for them. They don't want to be tied down to physical buildings and high rents, so they want to get out of those data centers into Azure. So there's still a huge amount of our business that is successfully getting them out of those data centers into Azure without seamlessly, without any issues. But we are also investing a lot in data science and AI because obviously we see that as a future. We've said that that's a future for years now, and so but it's easier said than done in terms of finding enough customers to build that capacity reliably. So that's been a journey in itself in terms of delivering and building that capability and that capacity for customers. But I think we're getting there now, and got some good use cases that we can then kind of shout about and then drive more growth accordingly. We're about to accelerate in data science and AI as well, with some strategic business decisions we're making or have made to accelerate that, but absolutely expect that to accelerate fast for us in the next year.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, because I think that paints quite a sort of similar picture to where I was on quite a lot of calls at the start of Microsoft financial year, and you kind of got these two narratives with Microsoft, which is, you know, the one that everyone's talking about is AI and, you know, changing all the solution areas to be AI focused and Copilot and Foundry, etc., etc. And obviously that's where Microsoft's going, but they were also really clear that sort of migrations are still central to what a lot of partners still do and still have to do, because a lot of customers are still on that journey, right?
No, exactly. It's that whole thing. It's been the same for decades, right? It's here's the ambition, here's the vision, but here's the reality. So customers are still on that journey, but that doesn't mean you can't bake some of that, you know, really good transformative stuff, value creating stuff into your plan. And I guess that's what we're just doing, is just continuing that delivery pattern for customers. It's like, let's identify those use cases. Let's get that automation in. Let's get that AI in. But alongside that, you need to transform your platform so that long term, this is a lot easier, is a lot faster. You're removing a lot of complexity that you don't have to manage anymore, so that you can focus your attention on delivering real transformative value. So yeah, it's both and I don't think we'll ever get away with that, away from that in technology. There'll always be something that's innovative, and you need to be able to capture that and deliver business transformation with that at the same time as recognizing your reality and addressing that, because technical debt is a real killer for organizations. We see that all the time, and it really drags them down in terms of focus, in terms of costs, in terms of preventing you from, you know, getting access to the data that you need to achieve difference. So it's really important to address both. But that's the benefit of cloud, right? Is you don't have to worry about when your SAN's going to expire anymore. You don't have to be troubleshooting networking issues on-prem. The cloud hyperscale cloud providers deal with all of that for you, so that you can focus on the difference for business that you can make with tech. So that's why I'm all in on cloud. I know I can be controversial in certain circles, and I'm part of a cloud leadership committee for Tech UK, and I think I went in naively thinking, we all believe in the type of cloud as a future, and then we get into defining what cloud is, and that there's different types of cloud, and actually, you know, that there's this on-prem stuff that's still very relevant. And whilst I can understand the rhetoric, and I can understand that there are use cases where things like that need to be considered, to deny that hyperscale cloud providers are the future feels crazy. So
yeah, and Microsoft are making their own plays to sort of to combat maybe sort of that some of that sort of cloud repatriation type conversation with Azure Local and Sovereign Cloud. They're almost giving customers and organisations now the opportunity to be like, if you want to be on-premise data center focused, well, you can do that with Azure Local and still manage it like Azure, but you can own the stuff, all the way through to just give as much control away as you want. So they are, I think, making plays
exactly.
on.
Yeah, there are cost considerations in terms of long-term storage that need to be in architecture and strategy. There's solutions for that, even if you're cloud first. There are reasons to have cached solutions and the ability to run an app locally in case of disaster, etc. So there are all sorts of reasons, but to have something on-prem or in a different place. But yeah, it's that mentality, and that's why I like that Microsoft's coming, and even AWS are coming up with these solutions, because it enables people to take that leap and to have a cloud-first mindset, and then say, okay, well, how do we deal with these fringe scenarios or use cases, and make sure that the overall architecture works for our organisation. I mean, particularly in when you've got public sector clients, disaster recovery is a massive deal for them. They are the responsible people in the event of a disaster. So in that sense, they have to have resilient solutions. But that shouldn't mean that gets in the way of them also embracing innovation and being efficient in other ways. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, really interesting journey that you've been on, Helen, and yeah, I think that the journey is only gonna continue, from the sounds of it. What one thing that we've not sort of touched on too much is obviously your role and your career in technology, and ultimately being a woman in technology. Starting out when you started, I imagine the landscape and the amount of female peers that you had in the technology space was maybe fairly limited. What did the landscape look like when you first stepped into tech? Probably very male dominated.
Very few females, often the only woman in the room, for sure. And it wasn't just about being the only female, it was a culture thing as well, particularly where I was, of kind of almost keeping the women down. And I hate to say that because it's changed so much now. But it was really difficult. It was really difficult to be known and to be seen as a valuable player and to be able to progress. Really hard work. But it's been really, really good to see that change over the years. And I remember about 10 years ago feeling like a real tide change, and I think it was just a generational shift in terms of more of us in the workforce now, in terms of a certain generation who perhaps been brought up we're all equal, etc. I remember that tide shift about 10 years ago, and it's just got better since. And now I don't really even think about it in terms of, oh, I'm a female in tech. I just think of I'm a person in tech. And there's a huge amount more of diversity. I mean, I still think in the leadership roles, still lacking diversity. I mean, I go to networking events for founders or CEOs in tech, and often still the only woman in the room, which is really disappointing. But I know the opportunities are there, and so hopefully it's just a matter of time before we see more diversity at those levels.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's definitely been a step change in the industry, and like I say, a lot of that probably is tied to sort of generational sort of changing of the guard. And I think I experience even just doing the podcast, which is predominantly focused on talking to either CEOs or founders or sort of senior leadership team within the Microsoft ecosystem. When I'm going out and looking for guests and talking to guests, the proportion of females to male is totally skewed towards the male side of things. I think what I would hope, and I think with how the landscape has changed, and hopefully as that generation of female technologists is coming through the workforce, hopefully over the next few years they'll start to pop up in a few more leadership roles, and hopefully 10 years time that experience of you maybe being the only female techie in the room 10, 15 years ago, when we flipped that into the leadership roles in 10 or 15 years, hopefully that would have shifted as well.
I'm sure it will. I don't think it'll ever be 50-50, but that's okay. I think, there is a leaning one way or another in terms of what people tend to want to do in terms of job roles and what they're interested in. And, even in school, like, there was a minority of us in the science classes, in terms of selecting those over other things. And I was in an all-girls school. So, I think there probably won't ever be 50-50, but I certainly think there'll be a lot more.
100%. Cool. We're going to dive into now my favourite part of every podcast, a bit of fun, which is Microsoft Mentors Quickfire Round.
Okay.
So nothing too crazy. Couple of sort of either/or questions, couple of sort of specific questions, and it's just good to see your take on it. So I always start with this one because it maybe trips up the Microsoft diehards in the room. When it comes to operating systems for devices, are you Mac or Windows?
Windows all the way.
Oh,
and it's not because I'm a Microsoft partner. I've always been Windows all the way. I have a Surface laptop, love it.
Yeah, it's surprising how many people that run Microsoft partners are actually doing it on a Mac.
On Mac, and Macs frustrate me. No, I like to be able to control all of the tech, and I think you can do that with a PC.
Yeah. You mentioned gaming earlier on. So are you Nintendo diehard, PlayStation, Xbox?
I feel bad not just quick fire answering that question, but it's none of the above. I was Sega when I was a child and a PC gamer as an adult, so it doesn't even fit into those boxes. However, you can see I do have some Nintendo stuff on my shelf, and definitely I've got into Switch with my kids, so probably have to say Nintendo, but it's probably not who I am.
I'm waiting for my little lads to be old enough to have a Switch, and then I'm going to get one straight away, get Mario Kart on the go, off we go.
Yeah. It's good and it's fun, but if you want real gaming, PC gaming.
Yeah. And what's your bit more of a sort of an open-ended question? Remote work versus office collaboration. What's your thought on that whole debate?
I would say a healthy balance of both. Probably lean more towards remote work than in office, because in tech, introverts tend to operate well that way. But I think it's good to have a healthy balance and definitely come together regularly.
Yeah. Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Oh, I'm neither. Well,
oh really?
I don't mind herbal teas, but I've never really got on with either tea or coffee.
I went into coffee when I was in America, and I was coffee, but it's really bad. I found coffee slumps aren't worth it, so definitely tea now.
Yeah. And are you a early bird, a night owl, or a bit of both?
Night owl. Yeah. Don't get me in the morning.
Yeah, I'm the same. My wife is like, how are you still doing stuff at like 10 o'clock? Or I'll be like, I'm going to go to the gym. She's like, it's 8 o'clock. I was like, yeah, it's fine. We've got loads of time left in the day. And final question, what's your favourite Microsoft product or product suite of all time? Okay, it's a bit of a wild card to see what people
I think maybe because you said of all time, like that's really hard. Probably their data stuff, Fabric data platform, even like the visualization, Power BI, etc. And AI. It's just really, I feel like we've finally got to a point where the technology has caught up with the vision, and it's like, oh, finally we can do what we always intended and knew was possible with tech. Microsoft data platform is just it's a beautiful thing, and it's so powerful, and you can do so much with it. So that's probably my favorite.
I think that intersection between big data sets, technology that can manipulate it, drive that into businesses to then look at, help with the analysis, that then ultimately drives business outcomes, right? Is super excited to see what's going to happen.
Absolutely, really exciting.
Well, Helen, thanks very much for your time. It's been really interesting to learn a bit more about your life and your journey and Shaping Cloud and what you guys are doing now. So thanks very much for your time, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. See you. Bye.
Hopefully you enjoyed this week's episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Whether you listen to us on LinkedIn Live, on YouTube, on Spotify, or wherever else you listen to your podcast, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe. Both myself, Ollie Ridley, on LinkedIn, our guests, and also the podcast. The more people that we know are listening, the more time and investment we can make into the podcast and bring more conversations with our Microsoft mentors and leaders from across the Microsoft partner ecosystem to our community. In the meantime, stay tuned and keep an eye out for next week's episode.